Hey movie lovers, former film student, finally back with another video. I want to start off by saying that 2020 has been an incredibly tough year for everyone, so I hope you made it through okay and are still pushing through. Not that 2021 will magically fix everything, but hopefully it's a bit better than this past year, and at some point we can get back to whatever normal is. The second thing is that I want to address my lack of content. It's been over 2 months since my last video, and I do sincerely apologize for that. I know I don't have a big following or anything, but I like to be somewhat consistent. But the main reasons for my lack of content are A, after my October series, I felt burnt out creatively and my ambition to post took a heavy hit. Posting 31 videos straight took a lot out of me, and while I'm super glad and proud of that series, working 40 hours a week with a crazy schedule and still managing to post consistently for 31 days is something I'm really proud of. Afterwards, though, I just felt super tired and wanted to take a break. But B, and this is where it gets a little personal, seasonal depression is something I struggle with heavily, and it's just been kicking my ass lately. Not that it is an excuse, but some days it's hard enough to get out of bed and go to my actual job, let alone put together a video and come across as enthusiastic and engaging. All of that said, I'm ready to get back to making videos. Unfortunately, some of the ones I was planning sort of fell to the wayside, mainly my Harry Potter ranking video, but who knows, maybe I'll get to that in the future. I actually rewatched all of the Harry Potter films in November for the video. However, I realized I didn't have a ton to say about each film. I feel like every time I rewatch that series, my love for it lessens a little bit. Not that they're not good and enjoyable films, it's just that they start to get very repetitive in the way that they're structured, and the later films, while still being pretty decent, I just can't get past the desaturated look. It's kind of an eyesore. With all of that out of the way, let's get to this video. I initially was just going to do a top 10 movies of 2020, but I thought instead, to make up for the lack of videos lately, I would just rank all the movies I saw from 2020 from worst to best. So numbers 36 through 21, I'm going to sort of fire through, then 20 through 11, go into a little more detail, and finally 10 through 1 really delve into. So let's just get right into it. Coming in at 36 is To All the Boys, P.S. I Still Love You. The sequel to All the Boys I Loved Before, this was the first film of 2020 that I watched. My god, this movie sucked. Devoid of any artistic vision or integrity, the first film was no masterpiece, but it was fun and lighthearted enough to not be offensive. This one was just a waste of time. At 35 is The Platform. This movie had a really neat concept, but failed in almost every way at its execution. The characters were uninteresting, there's not much happening in terms of plot, and overall it felt like a concept film, a movie that's easy to pitch because the whole film survives off its premise. But the filmmakers never go anywhere with it. At 34 is Lost Girls. What could have been a powerful and emotionally driven thriller drama becomes a boring and uneventful slog of a film. I wanted to enjoy this movie, but there was just very little to like about it, not particularly interesting visually, and the pacing was really off, which kept me from being invested. At 33 is probably my most controversial placement on the list, The Devil All the Time. A star-studded cast wasn't enough to save this film for me. It has gotten a lot of praise, but for me, it was an incoherent and joyless experience. I might have to give it another chance, but I just couldn't get into this movie. I didn't care for the characters, the narration, or how the plot was handled. It's not a horribly made film, but it just wasn't for me. At 32 is The New Mutants. It's never a good sign when the surrounding drama of a film's production is more interesting than the film itself. I never thought this film would be released, and it finally was, and even in theaters. But maybe it should have been kept on the shelf. It's boring, lifeless, and the worst part is that it's such a wasted opportunity. It had such a great chance to separate itself from other comic book films if only it had leaned into the horror elements more instead of the teen angst drama. At 31 is The Assistant, a film considered to be the first great Me Too film, a topic and subject that really needs to be explored in modern films and is very important to discuss. However, this just wasn't the film to do it for me. I'm all for positive messages in a film and don't mind slow burns, but nothing happens in this film. There's no drama, there's no stakes, there's no interesting characters. The visuals are bland. There's just nothing to latch onto this film other than its strong message. Coming in at 30 is The Lodge. I was excited for this one. It had a lot of hype going into it, and maybe that was a bad thing, because my god did I find this movie mediocre. Some of the shots were nice, but everything this film deals with or attempts to explore, it does so in such a non-eventful and standard way. Nothing is surprising or engaging about it. It really doesn't contain that much atmosphere and feels like a discount Hereditary. I wanted to like this one, it just didn't happen for me. At 29 is Vivarium, a movie that, based on the trailers, I was really excited for. Similar to The Platform, this film hinges on its premise. I was sorely disappointed after sitting through this 1 hour and 40-minute film that should have been a short film or episode of Black Mirror or maybe even The Twilight Zone. Its unique premise isn't explored, and after about 30 to 40 minutes, the film just gets repetitive. At 28 is The Way Back, a film from the same director as Warrior, a film that I really enjoyed back from 2011, and I was expecting something in a similar vein to that, but man, this movie is weird. Something just felt off about this whole film. The execution, the pacing, and I can't really place my finger on it, but the way in which the plot points are revealed and unfold is just so strange. Things happen at such odd times in the story that it was incredibly jarring and took me out of the experience. Ben Affleck was pretty good in this starring role, but nothing amazing. It was just pretty good. Overall, the film is just not that interesting and not really that well told or executed. Coming in at 27 is American Pie: Girls Rule. Now, I'm a massive fan of the main four American Pie films, and this could have been an okay movie, but it follows that modern day trend of remakes and reboots where it takes the Ghostbusters 2016 approach and takes a film that worked previously and just replaces the guys with girls. I have no issue with female-led casts. I think there's plenty of films with great female leads and female-led casts, but I do have an issue with lazy writing and just cherry-picking components of previous films. Come to Daddy comes in at 26, a thriller, drama, comedy, I think another weird film on this list. I was really digging this film for the first 15 to 20 minutes and thought the setup and initial premise was pretty unique and interesting, and then it just sort of goes south. It's one of those films you finish and just ask yourself, what was the point of that? It is nice to always see Elijah Wood in a film, though. At 25 is Wonder Woman 1984. In such a meh year for films, I expected Wonder Woman 84 to be much higher, but here we are. This movie is just bad. It's poorly written, incoherent, boring, uneventful, illogical, has terrible CGI, and is about a half hour too long. I watched this on Christmas Day like most, and I just have no desire to ever see this movie again. Enola Holmes comes in at 24, and I had no desire to watch this film, but it was kind of fun at parts. Millie Bobby Brown is charming enough and has enough charisma that I didn't mind her as the lead. The biggest issue is it doesn't feel like a film. It feels like the pilot of a new Netflix series. There's so many different subplots and characters introduced that it feels very cluttered at times. It's not a bad watch, but I'll probably never see it again. At 23 is The Lovebirds, a simple yet funny romantic comedy starring Kumail Nanjiani. There is nothing remarkable or special about this film, but the chemistry of the two leads and the overall comedic chops of both of them were enough to make this a forgettable, albeit enjoyable film. An American Pickle is in at 22. This movie was short, simple, and made me laugh a handful of times, so pretty much your average Seth Rogen film. I wanted it to be better, but for a movie about a guy who gets pickled for centuries, it could have been much worse. At 21 is Birds of Prey, one of the better DCEU movies, which, if we're being honest, isn't saying much, but the best parts of this film are Margot Robbie, Ewan McGregor, and the fight scenes. There's some pretty fun action bits and probably would have been a much better film overall had it just focused less on its uninteresting side characters like Cassidy Cain and more on Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. It also tries really hard to be Deadpool, and I'm not sure why, because that movie came out 4 years ago, so I don't know why they're trying to cash in on that sort of tone and style, but they did, and it just did not work out. Alright, we are in the top 20 now, so let's get into that. At 20 is The Hunt. Remember this movie? It caused a bunch of controversy because butthurt conservatives thought it was like anti-conservative. Well, in actuality, it's just a really dumb, albeit kind of fun, Hunger Games Battle Royale-esque parody. The worst parts are actually when it tries to poke fun at conservatives and liberals. Like, if it was going to go that route, I would have rather had them actually have something to say other than conservatives can be racist and liberals can be too PC/woke. The opening scene is pretty funny, and I like how you don't really know who the main character of the film is up until deep into the first act. I'd say it's a fun film to put on with a few friends, maybe make a drinking game out of. At 19 is the Hulu thriller Run, a by-the-numbers and predictable thriller from the same director as Searching, a film that was in my top 10 of 2018. I wasn't excited based on the trailers, as just by watching one you can sort of figure out how the film will play out. Sarah Paulson was pretty good, but my biggest gripe is the film doesn't bring anything new or interesting to the genre. The presentation was serviceable with some nice framing, but nothing spectacular. Whereas with Searching, I felt like I was watching something really fresh and new and exciting. Run feels like a competent yet unremarkable thriller. Coming in at the 18th spot is The Invisible Man, a modern day retelling of the classic Universal Picture story about the Invisible Man, probably the most mixed bag film of 2020 I saw because there were parts I loved in this film, such as the opening scene, which was incredibly tense, to the scene about halfway through the film inside the restaurant. However, the greatness gets bogged down by some really, really stupid writing and story choices. Elizabeth Moss is great as always, and her performance makes her character easy to root for. I just wish the film relied more on suspense and tension than it did turning into a pseudo-action film in later parts of the film. The movie sort of falls apart when you really start to think about some of the illogical inconsistencies. At 17 is The King of Staten Island, the latest comedy by Judd Apatow. Fun fact, I was actually supposed to work on this film as a camera assistant to the director of photography, but unfortunately due to uncontrollable circumstances, it never came to fruition. However, overall I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. It worked pretty well for the comedic parts, and some of the dramatic scenes actually had some weight to them. Pete Davidson is surprisingly pretty good, even if he's kind of playing himself, and Bill Burr and Marissa Tomei are also pretty great in this film. And as a really confused 23-year-old myself, seeing a guy in his 20s struggle to find his place in the world and figure out who he is resonated with me really well. As with any Apatow film, it's about 20 minutes too long, but overall it was a pretty decent watch. At 16 is my first animated film on the list, and that's Pixar's Onward. I knew nothing about this film going into it, so when it flips the tables in the first scene by transitioning from a fantasy world to a modern day story, I was pretty on board. I was able to catch this on Disney Plus recently and ended up really enjoying it. The characters, while a bit shallow, are likable enough, the voice acting is fine and serviceable, and obviously the animation looks spectacular. Come on, it's Pixar. This movie didn't really crack my top 20 until the final act, where I feel it ends in a really mature and surprising fashion. It's not one of Pixar's best, but it's one I can recommend to adults and kids and might catch again in the future. Beginning our top 15 is Bad Education, a dark comedy slash political drama about two high school employees who end up embezzling millions of dollars from the school they work at. Hugh Jackman is great, as is Allison Janney, and overall it's another mixed bag. There were parts of this movie I really enjoyed, and others not so much. The performances are strong as mentioned, and I appreciated the decision to shoot on 35mm film, which gave the film such a nice texture and feel to it. My main issues lay with how the script was handled and how some of the more dramatic elements unfold, mainly having to deal with Hugh Jackman's character and certain personal elements about him. I would have liked to have seen that been explored a little bit more and given more screen time. It would have made the whole situation a little more gray rather than black and white. At 14 is the latest Nolan adventure, Tenet. The trailers for this film got me super hype, and of course, it's another Nolan film. What's there not to be excited about? And it was one of the few 2020 films I actually got to see in a theater. Since seeing it, my love for it has kind of faded quite a bit. It's not a bad film by any means, and I can see why a lot were disappointed with it. I think that has less to do with the film itself and more about our expectations of certain auteurs like Nolan. But overall, it's an entertaining and exciting blockbuster with enough creativity and fresh ideas thrown in to make it a fun experience. I won't rush to see it again, and in terms of Nolan's filmography, it's on the lesser end, but it's still a pretty decent spy thriller. I definitely would have liked to have seen more time be put into the screenplay and developing the characters, but the action was enough to make up for it. At 13 is Wolfwalkers, a 2D animated film from animation studio Cartoon Saloon. The film tells the story of a young girl experiencing her new life in a small village after moving from London, when she stumbles upon a pack of wolves and another young girl who can actually turn into a wolf. The film is fun, funny, dramatic, and boasts great animation as well as great music. I especially loved how they animated the fire to be darker red than the traditional orange, which gave the scenes a really distinct look. The first act is a bit weak, and the setup could have used tightening, but once the friendship between the two young girls begins, the film becomes a really joyous experience. If you're a fan of animation and were disappointed with the lack of content in 2020, definitely give this one a chance. At 12 is a film that is hard to recommend to casual viewers, but we have First Cow. Kelly Reichardt crafted a beautiful, albeit slow adventure, a story about friendship and life and playing the cards you're dealt. This film is beautifully shot with fantastic music and overall is a very atmospheric experience. It's a very peaceful watch and is somewhat inaccessible to a mainstream audience. I don't think this film is for everyone, and I could completely understand someone finding this film boring and uneventful, but everything feels very purposeful and meticulously crafted. I don't know if it's one I need to watch again, but for a first watch, I had a really good time. At 11 is the last animated film on my list, and that's Pixar's Soul. I really, really liked this movie. After the disappointment that was Wonder Woman 1984, watching Soul on Christmas Day definitely put me in a better mood. The animation is wonderful, being able to capture the vibrancy and life of New York City. The jazz music was fantastic, and I wish it kind of played more of a role in the film. I don't think this is a masterpiece or return to form for Pixar that many consider it to be, but I think the themes and subject matter are pretty great, even if the execution at times isn't always the best. I loved all the stuff taking place in the real world, which made up for the parts in the Soul world that I found rather tiresome. I wasn't too big on the inclusion of the animated cat character, as I felt like the film could have explored its messages in a different, more exciting way, but overall, definitely one of the better films I've seen this year and would recommend it to most. Finally, we have hit our top 10 films of 2020. All of these films are ones that I thought were either really good or great. Some of these you may have heard of, some of them you may have not heard of. Either way, let's get into it. At 10 is Borat Subsequent Movie Film, the sequel to one of my favorite comedies of all time. Sacha Baron Cohen is at it again with this hilarious look at American culture and politics. It's not nearly as funny as the original film and lacks the energy and constant moving forward pace. However, that doesn't mean this film still isn't great. I was laughing constantly throughout the film, and the uncomfortable yet hilarious situations that Cohen puts himself and other people into are awesome. The inclusion of his daughter was one I was a little wary about from the trailers, but the actress did a fantastic job, and my god, the final 30 minutes of this film are incredible. The scene with Rudy Giuliani, I probably butchered that name, is one of the most cringe-inducing yet simultaneously gut-bust laughing things I've seen all year. I can't wait to watch this film again with friends.
Is he your father?
Yes.
This is your daughter?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to give my daughter a treat.
I understand. I don't
If
need
she
to hear
was-
I don't need to hear any more of that. I understand.
She just had
that.
But
she
look
is
at that face.
I understand.
How could I not give it
I
to her?
understand.
Would you have not given
I
it to
understand. Listen, it really.
Coming in at 9th is the most surprising film of the year, one that sort of came out of nowhere, Palm Springs. Equal parts romantic comedy / time loop film, Palm Springs is oozing with charm. Sandberg and Milioti have wonderful chemistry, and the energetic directing style and quick snappy editing make this film an absolute blast to watch. This is what I want from more mainstream films, taking a genre or concept we've seen played out in a million different ways before, no pun intended there, and adding a fresh and unique spin on it. It's easy to call this Groundhog Day meets any other rom-com, but it's a film that has a really distinct personality, and it's just so damn hard not to like. This film kind of came out of nowhere, but I'm interested to see what this director does in the future. If you would have told me that at the start of the year that a rom-com starring Andy Samberg would be in my top 10, I'd call you a nut job, but as the year went on, it remained one of my favorite viewing experiences. At number 8 is the sci-fi homage, The Vast of the Night, a quirky and energetic throwback to 50s sci-fi stories of visitors from outer space was one of the best surprises of 2020. The film stars Sierra McCormick from Disney Channel fame as two high school students with a passion for radio start to suspect that aliens might be in their town. The film has great camera work, especially a long take towards the beginning of the film that really wowed me. The dialogue is quick and fast-paced, albeit a bit overbearing at times, but man, there was so much I liked about this film. It was fun, unique, and although it wasn't a masterpiece, I'm always open to really great sci-fi films, and this one fits the bill. The scenes involving long interviews with people who claim to have experiences with extraterrestrial life were a bit long-winded but incredibly engaging, as the director allows for scenes to play out in a natural way instead of choppily editing it to appeal to mass audiences. Check out this film on Amazon Prime now if you haven't, especially if you like sci-fi movies and love like older sci-fi stories.
People are saying there's something in the sky.
It's 7:45. Write that down.
Can't you just record it?
Yeah, folks. It is 7:45 p.m. and we may have something that'll need some explaining here in a Santa Mira. Oh, what?
There is something in the sky. We followed it from Colt Canyon. I'm
I'm going by Gerald now. Please call me Gerald.
I'm Everett. This is Faith. We just had the power cut off at the radio
Where is
station.
everybody?
the radio from there?
Yeah, I do highway hits from 7 to 11. Are you
Drove
listening?
80 miles an hour all the way.
At 7 is a true gut punch of a film, Sound of Metal. This movie hits hard. Maybe not the most emotionally impactful film of 2020, that honor goes to a film we'll talk about a little later, but this film is still incredibly powerful. The story of a drummer played by Riz Ahmed who begins to go deaf struggles with his new life, especially considering he uses drumming to stay sober. It's an intimate glimpse into the world and everyday life of those who are deaf, and instead of demonizing deafness, it instead opts to showing how these people function and how being deaf is not a disability. A truly unique and incredibly fascinating approach to this subject. Riz Ahmed is unbelievable in easily his best performance to date, but the standout is Paul Raci as Riz Ahmed's mentor. The scene towards the end of the film between Raci and Ahmed is one of the best scenes I've seen all year, and the sound design in the film, which periodically maneuvers in and out of Ahmed's perspective, was absolutely incredible and really puts you into the shoes of his character. I can't wait to see what this director does in future films, and damn, is that final shot something remarkable. At 6 is The Wolf of Snow Hollow from Jim Cummings, director of Thunder Road, a film that cracked my top 10 films of 2018. This is a dark comedy/drama about a police officer, also played by Cummings, who tries dealing with a series of murders in his small town, whom many of the locals seem to think is being perpetrated by a werewolf. A unique premise with wonderful presentation, smooth and fluid camera work that gives each scene a great sense of energy and life. The third act may get a little weak, but this is one of the funniest and most entertaining films I saw all year. Cummings proves again to be an incredibly versatile artist as he yet again writes, stars, and directs the film. While it's not as great as Thunder Road, this is an incredibly unique film and I haven't ever seen anything like it. Cummings' comedic chops are on full display again as both an actor and director. He just knows how to take what would otherwise be a pretty standard scene and inject his own voice and style into it. I think everyone can find something to enjoy in this one and is easily one of the most accessible films in my top 10. Definitely check it out. You can rent it for a couple dollars on pretty much any VOD service, and I cannot wait to see what Jim Cummings does next.
Shut down the mountain. Get these cars out of here. Call your people. We need this parking lot.
John,
It's another young woman.
John, they're saying there's a big bear, big jaw, something.
No, it's a man. When do I get to be right about something?
Like the canine's lower mandible. That's what they're
Get
saying.
him on the phone. I'm not
I
listening
got
to
him
that.
on the phone. I'm telling you what they're saying.
Hey, you can't park that here. You can't park that here. We need you 500 feet away at least. The crime scene. Just park up Elm Street. I got Monica Bravo out here.
At 5th place is a Danish film from Thomas Vinterberg called Another Round. The film revolves around 4 high school teachers who decide to test a theory that humans are born with a blood alcohol deficit of 0.5%. A truly unique and interesting premise used to its fullest. This film is a blast. It's hilarious, emotional, sad, funny, and overall engaging from start to finish. I saw this film over a week and a half ago and have not been able to stop thinking about it. It deals with themes of alcoholism, drinking culture, substance abuse, depression, and so many other raw human emotions. Mads Mikkelsen is phenomenal in this movie as the star of it, giving my favorite performance by a male actor this year, conveying a plethora of different emotions. The movie is incredibly well shot with a host of other great performances and possibly my favorite ending scene in a film all year. My God, the energy and emotion conveyed in that final scene from Mikkelsen is truly breathtaking. And damn, I cannot get that last song from the final scene out of my head. I've listened to it probably 3 times a day, every day, since seeing that movie.
Terrified to be on the other side. How long before I go insane? I am so thrilled right now.
At 4 is the courtroom drama Trial of the Chicago 7 by Aaron Sorkin. Combine a super interesting historical event with the brilliance of Aaron Sorkin's writing style and his improving directorial talents, and you get one of the most engaging and riveting films of the year. This movie is a lot. There's a bunch of characters and a lot happening at once, but through great writing, I never felt lost or confused by any of it. Everything unfolds in a very thought-out fashion and is structured incredibly efficiently to the point where all these different characters and ideas mesh together in a strong, cohesive fashion. Sacha Baron Cohen as Abby Hoffman steals every scene he's in, and all of the other performances from this star-studded cast are great as well. Eddie Redmayne and Mark Rylance are especially fantastic, and at a time when our country seems incredibly divided, this film hits especially hard. I'd be lying if I said the final scene in the film didn't send chills down my spine. The film is on Netflix now, so definitely give it a watch. It's truly unbelievable, some of the stuff that happens inside this movie, and sitting back and considering that these events actually happened.
Someone from the crowd shouts.
A guy somewhere in the crowd shouts.
Someone in the crowd shouted.
Take the hill!
The street name for chloroacetone phenol is tear gas. And it's a fucking blowtorch. Your lungs, your skin, your eyes.
Coming in at number 3 is a film that seemingly came out of nowhere, and that is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. When I mentioned the most emotionally impactful film of 2020, this is the film I was talking about. A heartbreaking and realistic look at the journey of a 17-year-old high school student who decides to get an abortion. This film isn't preachy in the slightest and does a fantastic job at taking this subject matter and viewing it from as objective of a lens as possible. It's not trying to force any message down your throat, instead choosing to focus on this girl as she goes through one of the hardest things any woman ever has to go through. Sydney Flanagan gives the best performance I've seen all year as the young, struggling main character, and my God, the questionnaire scene later on in this film is one of the purest forms of acting I've ever seen. I felt like someone had ripped my heart out, and it's all because Flanagan is able to convey so much genuine and raw emotion with very little dialogue. I was truthfully blown away by her performance. The choice to shoot on 16mm film also gave the aesthetic such a naturalistic and real feel to it. I was absolutely floored by this film and recommend it to anyone and everyone. If you love films about real people dealing with real struggles and emotions, this one is for you. The runner-up for my favorite film of 2020 is Mank. Come on, it's David Fincher making a black and white film about old Hollywood and about the screenwriter Herman Mankiewicz who wrote Citizen Kane, which many consider to be the greatest film of all time. As a former film student, this movie was made for people like me. I totally understand how some can see this film as pretentious, boring, and uneventful, but I don't care, because I absolutely loved it. The decision to shoot on a camera that could only capture images in black and white, allowing for the camera to get even crisper images, combined with some of the most gorgeous and incredibly well-lit scenes I've ever seen, made this film a visual masterpiece. I loved pretty much everything about this film: the look, the sound, which were done to replicate old Hollywood films, the characters, the scenery, the production design, the script, the pacing, the performances. All of it was just flawless filmmaking in my opinion. Even those who don't like this film agree that from a technical standpoint, this movie is phenomenal. Fincher is my favorite director, so nobody had higher expectations going into this film than me. However, my expectations were met and then some. I was thoroughly engaged throughout the entire film and never found myself bored or wanting the film to end. The script was penned by Fincher's late father, Jack Fincher, and I think my only critique of the story would be that I would have loved to have seen more of the dynamic between Herman Mankiewicz and Orson Welles. Other than that, the way the story unfolds and how we get a glimpse into the political and social landscape of 1930s Hollywood was super fascinating to me. Overall, it's one of my favorite films, not only of the year, but one of my favorite films for my all-time favorite director. Check it out if you're a fan of meticulously crafted period pieces. It's on Netflix now. It's a Netflix original. It's fantastic in my opinion. I absolutely love it. It's not for everyone, but since I loved it, I'm going to have to recommend it to everyone.
Put aside gratitude, Mac. That you've done your best work was no accident. I removed any distraction, eliminated every excuse. Your family, your cronies, liquor. I gave you a second chance.
And for that, I cannot thank you enough.
But with credit for a risky undertaking must go the weight of real responsibility. Given your current health, I wonder if you're up to it.
And frankly, I wonder too, but we'll find out.
You may never work in this town again, Mac.
Orson, please.
Alright, we made it to first place on my 2020 film rankings list, and what film comes in at number 1? It's the masterpiece from my favorite screenwriter, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. One of my most anticipated films of 2020, and boy was I not disappointed. I love this film. I think it's as close to perfection as a film can be. It's entertaining, incredibly well shot, great pacing, interesting characters, thought-provoking, and to be honest, somewhat of a euphoric experience for me. And no, not just because I share the same name as the main character. This movie does everything right in my opinion. I watched it the day it was released, and then less than a week later gave it a rewatch, which for me is super rare. I can't remember the last time I've rewatched a film in such close proximity to a previous viewing, and after viewing it a second time, my love for the film grew even further. The amount of subtext and existential themes the film deals with and how it's executed, not only from a screenplay standpoint, but from a presentation standpoint, is truly mind-boggling. Charlie Kaufman, as always, makes a film that has stuck with me from the second I saw it. It's something I watched a few months ago, and it's rare a week has gone by that this film hasn't crossed my mind. I don't throw the term masterpiece around loosely, but for this film it feels quite deserving. What starts as a simple story of a woman visiting her boyfriend's parents for the first time turns into a film about existential loneliness, regret, and one's place in the universe, and how even the simplest of interactions can plague our mind for decades. I struggle to think of another film in recent memory that was as meaningful and purposeful and personal as this one. Kaufman does it again, and it was easy to place this film at number 1. This film is also on Netflix, so if you're into mindfuck films and films that have a lot of meaning and subtext and rewatchability, this one might be for you. I also did a review on this channel of this film back when it was released in September, I believe, so you can go check that out if you'd like.
Cows, some horses, sheep, fields, and barns. Such a big sky. Feels like I've known Jake longer than I have. What has it been? A month? 6 weeks, maybe 7. I should know exactly. I'll say 7 weeks.
Well, that is it for this video, guys. I have now ranked all of the 2020 films that I have seen. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Apologies if some of your favorites either were too low on this list or didn't make it at all. Chances are I just did not see it. There was plenty of films that I had wanted to get to from 2020 that just I had little time to watch films. This is the lowest amount of films I've watched in a year. And not just because of the fact that COVID pushed a lot of films back and a lot of films were not released this year. Just in general, I was working a lot, so I didn't get to see as many films. In general, there just wasn't a ton coming out. So it was a combination of a lot of things. But there was a couple films that I think definitely would have made my top 15 or top 10 had I had seen them. So I'll put those in a picture or something like that right here. But that is it for today, guys, and as always, I will see you guys on the next video. I plan on posting a lot more in the future. I have some video ideas that I'd love to get to. I'm starting to feel a little better. Seasonal depression, again, is still something that is plaguing my mind, but I'm trying to fight through it and push past it, and I think that, you know, I'm feeling a little better lately and feeling more optimistic and creative. So I got the creative juices flowing. So definitely look forward to some more videos in the future. I can't wait to put some of them out. I have some ideas, some video essays, some reviews, and all that great stuff. And hopefully 2021 is a better year for film than 2020 was. Not that it was horrible, but I hope 2021 brings us a lot of different and exciting and unique films. Well, anyway, this is a long-winded outro, but anyway, I just wanted to get all my thoughts across. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to click the like button, subscribe to me if you want to hear more from me, and I will see you guys on the next video.